Hi, today I'm going to show you how to connect Claude, this thing here, which is a chatbot, in case you are from Mars, and with the make.com MCP. But before I show you how to do that, let me start with the end in mind. This is part of my human in the loop AI experiment about how we need to set up our lives to work closely with AI. And what I wanted was to be able to do things in Claude to other systems. So, for example, clocks, time in my diary tomorrow morning to think. This is just an example, a bit of a silly example, but it'll show you what works. And it's finish my make MCP reporting, check availability. Now what it does is checks, and now it creates. And I've set it up so that it knows that recordings should be long, 2 hours, if I say recording and so on. So it's like organizing my life, okay? And now the other thing I want to do is what work is outstanding. What work is outstanding, as in not that it's amazing, but needs to be done. And it goes and pulls this back. So what I've got is Claude acting as an interface to lots of different systems. And by working in this way where it has situational awareness across many different things, it is helping me organize work like 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance, keeping things up to date and automatically doing other stuff. Now, why did I go down the route of connecting the make MCP server? When I was looking at how I could achieve that aspiration, and let's put onto the parking lot whether this is actually going to long-term help or not, I had two options. One was to, which you can see on the left-hand side, is use Claude, see if there's an MCP for all the systems I wanted to use or activate, connect those systems up. But what I found is that there are a lot of systems where the MCPs aren't provided by the platform itself. So you've got third-party systems. Some can be more robust than others. Others are paid for. And suddenly I would go, hang on a minute, I've got maybe 10, 20 systems, and I'm now going to have to pay for 20 different MCPs. Or, and I think what Make did is a bit genius, and I believe other automation platforms are doing it, but I'm doubling down on Make because it's very accessible. It requires less of a developer mindset, so you'd be able to activate it. So where I've got to is we've got Claude, and it's connected to Make via its MCP connection. And then I have built on-demand scenarios to perform the CRUD operations. For those of you who don't know what the CRUD acronym is, it's explained on the bottom right there, for every single system that I want to interface with. So I now have full control of how I interface with those systems, what I send them, how I tune the agents to work with those systems and return information back to me. And this for me is working super well. So that's the reason why I did it. And I'm now going to show you how to connect these up and show you some of the nuances of working with the Make connections and some of the glitches that I have found. So firstly, I'm going to show you where to find the MCP connection. You go down here, click on your name, profile, and then up here you'll see API MCP access. And then it's super simple. So you go add token, MCP token, and then you click add. And as soon as you've done that, you get a URL that looks something like this. And then when you have that URL, you go into Claude settings. You need to be on Pro, and you go into connectors and add custom connector and just paste that URL in here and give it a name. It is literally as simple as that. So, I'm not going to go through that. And once you've got that done, you will see over here, I've got my Make connector, human in the loop actions, and you will see that any scenario that you've created that is set to run on demand is available to you now as an action within Claude. Now, I'm going to share next some of the little nuancy learnings I've made by creating all of these actions so that you don't get frustrated like I did. Now, the first thing you need to do when you set up one of these on-demand scenarios is to save it as an on-demand scenario, because until you do, this next step you won't be able to do. And I'll show you what I mean. So you need to set a scenario input so that whatever your GPT is, because these are for that use case, knows what needs to be sent. If you look in here, I've created this variable called appended text, and I've made it required because that's true. Now, what I mean by making sure you save it as on demand, because there's a little glitch here. When you create these scenarios, you'll want to define inputs like this one. So the input is appended text, and it appends the text to here. What I want to do is make sure that it's required. So that's what I did. And then as soon as you set it to required, if you hit save, you come up with this error. So here, let me show you what I mean about writing for the GPT. So each of the inputs, you want to make sure that you have got a clear description of what is supposed to go in there. And the Claude then uses that to put the right thing into the right place. The other little trick I learned is that in this scenario, we search all the rows from a Google Sheet. We want to return everything, so we aggregate to JSON. And you always need to return the output, otherwise Claude won't see anything. So in here, what is really useful is there's a new token which allows you to return the whole bundle of what's been aggregated, rather than what you would normally do is the JSON string. So don't return the JSON string, return the entire bundle. That way Claude will then see everything that's in your Google Sheet and be able to do whatever you ask it to do, like find the most relevant article to follow up from this article. The other thing I found very useful is like this scenario, which logs new work we need to do into Superbase, is to make sure you return the success or failure of this module so that Claude knows it's been successful. In here, I just return the status of the result of this module. The final thing that's important for you to do, let me go into My Tools, edit the description, and here's an example. This is a good example. So I've put this description is visible to Claude. So when I now say, hey, create an event in my diary, it will, without me prompting, check my availability, make sure it doesn't double book me rather. And then in here, I did the same thing. I just returned the status so that Claude knows it's successful. So you've got a bit of granular control to make sure that you get the minimum required inputs, because otherwise you just end up with a load of blanks in your diary. So let me show you some last few bits and pieces that may catch you out. If I have one criticism about the MCP connection, if you go in here, Tools and Settings, it'll show you all the tools, but at the moment, you cannot provide any resources. You cannot provide any prompts, which is a part of the MCP definition. And that would be useful because you can then really more robustly customize some of these actions. The other thing you need to be aware of is that when you make a change in the scenario, it doesn't always go and get translated in here. So what you need to do is refresh the connection. And the way to do that is hit disconnect and just click disconnect. And it automatically reconnects itself. And once it's done that, your changes and the ones where I've observed some caching is very much in when you have those input fields and you put in those prompts which tell the GPT what format to put the information in, which is important. There's a bit of caching there. So when you do that disconnect and refresh, it'll then pick those up. Let me finish off by showing you where that description starts becoming very important. So in the input, this type is a text type because you don't have enum as an input. But in the description, I added this so that the GPT knows what the valid enum values are. And that is what I mean by sometimes you may make those changes, and then by hitting that disconnect and refresh, that'll then push these descriptions through, and your interface between Claude and the on-demand scenario will run much smoother. A final top tip when you are using the make.com MCP connection and your on-demand scenarios are doing the action is to put in some error handling that will tell whatever the MCP client is, Claude or OpenAI, whatever, that something has gone wrong with the scenario run. I'll just show you how to do that. Let me tell you why it's important, because if you don't have this, when the Claude, for example, initiates the action through the MCP tells Claude it's worked, which is true because it has worked. You know, the scenario run has started and it's done. So Claude thinks, I'm good, I've done what I need to do. But in reality, an error can occur in the module and it wouldn't know about it. So the suggestion, and my thanks to the Make team for giving me the heads up on this, because I think it's slightly changed. So you click here, click Add Error Handler, and then put in the return output. And what I've done is I've just given it the error. So now if something fails in any module in your on-demand scenario, Claude will know what the error is, the type, the message, and the detail. I found this like super useful because I was working away and making assumptions that actions had happened, but they hadn't really. So once you've done all of this, and it may seem a pain, but you can then do simple things like this. You can say, Mark has done. So a lot of stuff that required me to go and click and click and click. And while individually, okay, that's not a big deal, collectively, all of that time adds up. I can just simply go in here and put in those commands. And what I'm working on next is creating shortcuts so that I have to write even less. So I hope that's been useful. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you on the next Human in the Loop share.